We begin today the Gemara on Daf Beis Amud Beis, where it says V'hadet Nan, 4 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara here is discussing why does the Mishnah use the term Shalosh Drachim as opposed to Dvarim. So it explained it in our Mishnah that it uses the term Drachim because the Gemara gave two pshatim, either because it speaks about Bia, and regarding Bia the pasuk uses the term Derech, or the Gemara said it's coming to tell us this thing that Rab Shimon said, that when it comes to getting married, so there's a certain derech of who is looking for who. That it's the derech of the ish to go and find the aveda and look for his wife, not the other way around. That's the remez of the union of derech. But here, the Gemara is going to ask a few questions on this from other mishnayos, and in the end, the Gemara is going to come out with a different answer. So now let's understand the word of derech that it uses in other mishnayos. B'sayin drachim, the Mishnah mentioned before, there are 7 different ways, boitkin es hazov, that you inspect the zav that has an emission to see what was the cause of this emission. As mentioned before, when it comes to a zachar, a male, when he has an emission, he'll only be tamei if it came out without any external cause that brought it, which is sort of an oinus. It has to be something that comes from the flesh on its own. So there's 7 different things that you have to look into. So over here as well, the question is, listen, dvarim. Why doesn't it use the term dvarim, that there are 7 things we have to look into? Why the term drachim? And says the Gemara, so there we could answer that the term drachim is teaching us the darka lemechle yisera, that what happens is, the derech is that if a person eats too much, lasuya ledeziva, it can cause that he should become a zav. Or darka demishta yisera, if he drinks too much, lasuya ledeziva, that he can become a zav. So the term derech is coming to say the way how this happens. Now this that we learned in another Mishnah regarding the esrig tree. Esrig shavel ilon begimel drachim. The esrig is similar to a tree in 3 different ways. Now Rashi here brings that the 3 halachas that this Mishnah is referring to is the halacha of Arla, that a tree for the first 3 years is asat to have any ana of it. Then there's the halacha of Revai, which is the 4th year, that you have to bring the fruits to Yerushalayim. And then also regarding the halacha of Shemitah. How do you determine if the fruits of this tree are Shemitah fruits or not? You have when the tree began blossoming, which is called Chanata, which according to most opinions means when the flower falls and the fruit comes out. Or you have the Lakita, the time when the fruit is ripe and it's ready to be picked, when you're picking the fruit. So when you have a tree that grew, it began growing in Shemitah, but it was picked after Shemitah, is that part of Shemitah or not? By a tree, we go after the Chanata. We go after when it was blossoming, when it's growing. So the esrig has the halachas in these 3 things, Arla, Revai, and Shemitah, that you go after the Chanata when it began blossoming, that then it will be part of Shemitah, and not like a yerek, not like vegetables. When it comes to vegetables, you determine if it's part of Shemitah or not when it was actually picked, the Likita. Okay, so those are 3 ways that the esrig has the same halacha as a regular tree. So over here, the question is, listen dvarim. Why doesn't it say the term dvarim? There are 3 things, 3 halachas that it's like a tree. Why the term drachim? And it says the Gemara, mishum debin in the misni seife, because in the end of that Mishnah it says, uliyerek b'derech echad, that there is one way that an esrig does have the halacha like vegetables. And what's this halacha? The halacha regarding maisris. That to determine what maisris is chayiv in that year. Now, there are certain years that you give maiser rishon and maiser sheni, but there are other years that you don't give maiser sheni. Instead, you give maiser oni. So, right on the 3rd year and on the 6th year, you give maiser oni instead of maiser sheni. So you have to know which year does this vegetable belong to. So by the yirakis, by the vegetables, you go by when it's actually picked. So by the esrig tree, when it comes to the halacha of maisris, you also go by when the esrig was actually picked from the tree to know which year this esrig belongs to. So over here it uses the term derech echad. So in the Reisha it also says the term gimel drachim. But the Gemara asks on that right away, say fenami, in this halacha in the end of the Mishnah, nisni davar, should also say the term davar. That it's like a yerek, it's like a vegetable in one thing. Why does it use the term derech? And says the Gemara, Hassam, when it comes to the Sefer, when it talks about the fact that an esrig tree is compared to a vegetable, ha kamash malon, this is what the Mishnah is teaching us. It's a very unusual thing that here you have a tree, it's an esrig tree, and it's compared to a vegetable, why should it be compared to a vegetable? So the Mishnah, by using the term derech regarding this, is telling me the following: the darkei de esrig keyerek, that the nature of the esrig tree, in some sense, is similar to the way vegetables grow. Ma yerek darkei li godel al kol mayim, just like vegetables, they grow with all waters, meaning it's not enough for it to grow just with rainwater. It needs water much more constantly, and you have to water it in order for it to grow. So and therefore, b'shas likitosai isurai, and the halacha by the yerek is, as mentioned, that when you pick it, that's what determines what year it's in to be chayiv and maisris, and which maisris. Af esrik, so too the esrik tree, and the nature, the way it grows, is similar in this sense to the vegetables, because darkei godla kol mayim, esrik tree also does not rely just on rainwater. Rashi says if it relies on rainwater, that's what's called roiv mayim, that just the rain takes care of the trees, and that you don't have to water it additionally. But no, esrik tree needs to be watered constantly, and therefore ubishas likitase isure. When it comes to the maisris, you have to give the maisris similar to the vegetables. Okay, so Rashi here brings the psukim from where it's learned out from, even though the whole inyan of maisris regarding vegetables is not menatayre. It's all menatayre. The mitzvah of maisris is only for goyim v'yekev. According to Rashi, it's only when it comes to the grain, or when it comes to the vineyards, or oil, the olive trees. But nevertheless, midrabanan, there is a maisris for yerek, and the chachamim were saimich on the psukim to show this difference that you see, that the Yerakis, you determine the Meiser is different than the way it is by the trees, and esrik tree is a very weak tree. It's a different kind of tree than regular trees. It needs a lot of water, and therefore in this sense, in this halach, it's compared to the vegetables. So we understand why here use the term derech to show you this nature, the way it grows, that it has, similar to a vegetable. But the Gemara has a question from another Mishnah, when it says in the Mishnah, koi. A koi it's not clear if it falls in the category of a behemoth or a chaya. Is it like a domesticated animal, or is it a wild beast? So yesh by drachim shaval chaya. There are some things that it has the halacha like a chaya, and Rashi says the relevance of that is regarding the mitzvah of kisui adam. Kisui adam is only by birds and by chayas. So over here it has the halacha of kisui adam. Yesh by drachim shaval behemoth. On the other hand, it has the halachas that are similar to a behemoth. What's the halacha that a behemoth has? Chaylev. The fats of a behemoth are aser. By a chaya, those halachas of chaylev do not apply. So the koi has the halachas of those forbidden fats. And then there's certain things that has the halacha like a chaya and a behemoth, which Rashi says refers to shchita. It needs to be shechted in order to eat it. And then we also have to treat it like a min for itself. It's not a chaya and not a behemoth. And Rashi says the relevance of that is regarding the issur of klayim, that it can't be cohabited with not a chaya, not a behemoth, because it's a species for itself. So if you hear the question is nisni dvarim, why doesn't it use the term in this Mishnah of dvarim, these different things? Why ways? So another question. This that it says in the Mishnah Masechta Gittin. Zu achas min adrachim. The Mishnah over there is comparing the halacha of a shtar shichra, when you free a eved kanani, to the halachas of a get, when you make a get for when you give a get for a isha. And there the Mishnah concludes and says, Zu achas min adrachim. This is one of the ways sheshavu gitei noshim l'shechrurei avadim, that we compare the get of a woman to the document that frees a slave. So over there as well, nisni dvarim, let it use the term dvarim. So based on the premise of the answer the Gemara before is, the word derech, which means a way, shows about a certain nature of something, how this thing is done. But over here in these inyanim, l'chayre, there's nothing particular that it's expressing with the term of derech about the nature of this thing. So why does it not use the term of dvarim? So therefore, the Gemara comes up with a different answer. Ella, rather, the pshat of here is as follows. Kol heiche, the ikke plukte, anytime the Mishnah is telling you a halacha where it's making a certain distinction in the matter, tani drachim. There the Mishnah uses the term drachim. So in all these cases, the Mishnah is coming up with a certain distinction. Right? Starting with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is saying that you can be kaina isha begimel drachim. So the Mishnah here, Rashi explains, even though the Mishnah is not really making a distinction the way it is in other places, but the Mishnah is saying you may have thought that you could be kaina isha in another way, and the Mishnah is coming and saying no. It's only with these gimel drachim, kesef, shtar, and biyah. What's the Mishnah coming to exclude? The Mishnah is coming to say, not chuppah. We'll see in a moment about chuppah. So the Mishnah is coming to make a chiluk, dafke these three ways and not something else. And the same when it comes to the other Mishnayos that were mentioned before, it's coming to say that it's dafke these drachim and not others. For example, by the ziva, Rashi says, the Mishnah there lists 7 different things that can cause the ziva. It's dafke these 7 which are considered an oinus and not anything else. And the same thing by the get. It's these things that they're compared and not anything else. So when there's a plukta, when you're making a distinction and you're excluding other things, tani drachim. But otherwise, it doesn't say the term drachim. If there's no distinction that's being made, then tani dvarim. Then it uses the term dvarim. Kanami, I'll prove this to you. The Tani Seife, going back to the Mishnah mentioned before regarding the esrik tree, in the Seife of that Mishnah, there's another opinion, and he says, esrik shavele ilon l'chol davar. That an esrig does have the status like a regular tree for everything. So over here, he's not making any distinctions, so therefore uses the term davar for everything. So Shema Mino, from here we see that the term derech is used when you're numbering a certain thing and you're making an exclusion and a distinction. Now going back to the Mishnah, the Gemara will discuss why does the Mishnah give numbers. Minyana dereisha lemutamai. Whenever the Tana of a Mishnah gives a number, it's coming to exclude something. So the number in the Reisha, when it says shalish, what is that coming to exclude? And Minyana de Seife, when it says the number in the Seife regarding how a Isha could be kind herself, lemutamai, what is that coming to exclude? Says the Gemara Minyana de Reisha, when it says in the Reisha of the Mishnah that there's only 3 ways that a woman can be acquired to her husband, lemute chuppah. Comes to be memayit chuppah. What's chuppah? Chuppah is the second stage of marriage, when the father gives over his daughter to the husband and that he takes her to live with her. It's not chuppah here in the Gemara. It does not refer to the chuppah that we refer to today, which is the canopy that you put above them by the time of the chuppah. The chuppah is the yichud, when the nisuin, when he goes and is married to her. Right, so you would have thought that the Mishnah over here is saying that there's 3 ways you can be kaina, isha, kesef, shtar, and biyah. But then, if you want, you can skip that first stage and you can go straight to chuppah, which is the father giving over his daughter, or the wife, the woman, going to the husband and living with the husband, and that creates a kinyan as well. And you go straight into the first and second stage of marriage. Maybe that would be the kinyan. So our Mishnah is saying, no, chuppah does not create this kinyan. You have to first have the kinyan of Kidushin, which is only kesef, shtar, and biyah. That's what it is excluding. In fact, the Gemara Rav Huna the Ama chuppah kaina. Rav Huna holds that chuppah actually does work, like the 3 kinyanim of kesef, shtar, and biyah. Mikal v'chaymer, and Rav Huna has a kal v'chaymer for this. This is going to be later here in the Gemara on Daf Hey. We'll see there in Mitzvah Shem. So if Rav Huna says chuppah is kaina, so lemutamai. So then, when it says in the Mishnah the number 3, what other kinyan is it coming to exclude? And says the Gemara lemuti chalipin. It's coming to exclude the kinyan of chalipin. What's the kinyan of chalipin? Rashi says the kinyan of chalipin is also called kinyan sudar. This is when the buyer takes a handkerchief and he gives the handkerchief to the seller, and the seller picks up the handkerchief, and in exchange you get the item that the seller is selling to you. Right? It doesn't. Now this is not a kind of an exchange where you have the value of you're exchanging 2 things that have a similar value. You just take a handkerchief. It doesn't have to be worth anything, and you give it to the seller, and he picks it up, and it creates a kinyan. Rashi brings over here the source of this kinyan is from what it says in the pasuk in Rus by Boaz, when he took off a shoe and he gave it to the seller, and he picked up the shoe, and that's how he acquired a property. And this is actually a very common kinyan that's used for everything. Like for example, when you go to do mechiras chametz, you come to the Rav, he tells you pick up a towel or something, a handkerchief, to create the kinyan. This is the most basic kinyan that can be used for anything. Right, so over here, you would think to say that maybe when you're kaina isha, so the husband could give the woman a handkerchief, she picks it up, and that, like this, he acquires it, just like you acquire a property. Now, why would I think chalipin works? Where would there be a source to say that chalipin should work for Kidushin, for the kinyan of Kidushin? Because I would think to say, since we said before that the source of the kinyan of Kesef is from the Gzeira Shaveh, that you compare Kicha, which is learned from Sdei Ephraim. So Mas Sada, if so, maybe I should compare an Isha to a Sada to this extent as well. Just like a property, Mekanyi B'Chalipin, you could acquire it with this kinyan of Chalipin. Afishanami Mekanyi B'Chalipin. So a person could acquire a woman with Chalipin as well. Kamash Mulan, that's where the Mishnah says the number 3 to exclude the kinyan of Chalipin. Fragt the Gemara, but ve'eme hachanami. Maybe we should say that Chalipin does work for the kinyan of Kidushin, if we're learning it from a Sada. And says the Gemara, Chalipin isnu bepachas mishava peruta. Chalipin is a kinyan that you use in a handkerchief that doesn't even have to have the minimum value of a shava peruta. And the isha bepachas mishava peruta, a woman with less than a peruta, loy mekanya nafsha, will not sell herself for something that has no value at all. So here, there's two pshatim in the Gemara. Rashi's pshat in the Gemara is that the reason why this doesn't work is because it's an embarrassment for her. That she's selling herself to a husband with something that doesn't have any value of a shava pruta. And Rashi goes on to say, and even if you're going to use for the chalipin an item that does have a shava pruta, but because the nature of the kinyan itself is a kinyan that doesn't require a shava pruta, so it's a cheap kind of a kinyan, so this is embarrassing for her. So therefore this is not a kind of a kinyan that will ever work for the inyan of Kidushin. The Torah says that it has to be a kinyan, a kicha of kesef, something of value, not something which is a gnai for her. That's Rashi's pshat. Okay, that's also a discussion. Taisus brings up that Indian that l'chayra a shtar doesn't have, but a shtar is not learned out from here. There's a different makkah for shtar. It's learned out from a get, the yatzav haisa. Okay, it's a good question. Taisus asks this question over here about shtar. But Taisus has another girsa here in the Gemara. Taisus says you're not guided in the Gemara the word nafsha. What the Gemara is saying is that because chalipin works pachas mishava pruta, so loy mekanya. It's not a kinyan that works, not because of the isha, the gnai that she has in selling herself for something that's so cheap. Loy mekanya, the Gemara is saying is the havamina was that chalipin is similar to kesef, and therefore, just like kesef has a source from the gzeir shava kicha, so maybe chalipin is included in that source as well. And the Gemara is answering chalipin is not similar to kesef. And the raya that chalipin is not similar to kesef is because kesef has to be at least a shava pruta. Chalipin that does not have to be a shava pruta is not daimit to kesef. So therefore we have no source for the kinyan of chalipin. That's more or less Taisus' pshat. The Rishonim speak about it, but those are the two basic pshatim here in this Gemara. In Yon, the Sefer, when it says the number in the Sefer regarding a isha acquiring herself, so it says that there's two ways. Lamutimai. What is that coming to exclude? Says the Gemara, lemute chalitza. It's coming to exclude chalitza for a regular wife, not regarding a yevame, so she can't acquire herself with chalitza. Now, why would I have to exclude this? So, kedaita chamine, I would think to say, teisi b'kavachaymer mi yevame. I could learn it out. It should work for an isha with the following kavachaymer from a yevame. Ma yevame sheni yaitze beget. If when it comes to a yevame, so for her a get does not work. Yaitze b'chalitza, but nevertheless chalitza does work. Zu she yaitze beget. So a person's wife that he could divorce her with a get, einedin sheyaitze b'chalitza. Definitely chalitza should work. Kamash malan. That's why the Mishnah is saying that chalitza does not work. That's the miyat of the number. Ve'eime hachanami. Maybe I should say with this kavachayim that chalitza should actually work. Says the Gemara, no. Omakra. The Torah says by a get sefer krisis. Sefer karsa ve'ein davacha kaisa. Only the document of a get is what severs a wife from a husband, and nothing else. Chalitza that says by Yevameh does not work. That's the miyut of the Sefer of the Mishnah. Okay, so here the Gemara will begin the discussion regarding the three different kinyanim the Mishnah said. The Gemara will begin with kesef. What's the source for the kinyan of kesef? So it said in the Mishnah bekesef. So we already brought before a source from the gzeir shava of kicha mizdei yafrain, but it was only brought up before derech agav. It was brought up before just to explain the term of nickness in the Mishnah. But here's where the Gemara is actually going to discuss the source of kesef, and l'chatchila, the Gemara starts off with a different source. Later on, the Gemara is going to bring this gzeir shava of kesef, which is a second opinion. But first, it brings another source. So minala, from where do we know that kesef works by the kinyan for Aisha, by Kidushin? So another question is on this, Ha'ad Tanan. It says in the Mishnah in Ksubis, Ha'av zakai bebitoi. A father has the rights in his daughter, and we're talking about a daughter which is a ketana or a naida, up until the age of a begeres. As we know, regarding a girl, there are three stages in her maturity. A ketana before bas mitzvah, then the age of 12, when she's bas mitzvah, until 12 and a half about, and then from 12 and a half, she's mature enough and she's a begeres. So a father has a right in his daughter for a ketana and a naida b'kidusheha, for her Kidushin, and that's b'kesev, b'shtar, u'b'biyah. Now what it means over here, kesev, b'shtar, and biyah, is that the father is the one that's mekadosh her. He has the right to decide who he wants to marry her off to. and he gets the kesef, he's makab, the act of the Kidushin, the husband doesn't give the kesef to the girl. The husband gives the kesef to the father. And the same thing with the shtar. The shtar is given to the father. Right? And as we'll see soon, the Gemara is going to say what we're looking for over here is regarding the kesef is that the father gets to keep this kesef. It becomes his. Now, bia, when it says over here bia, what does it mean that the father has the rights to bia? It means that the father could decide who his daughter should marry, and she'll be mekudeshes with bia, and this is even against her will. He can force her to get married to this man that he chooses for her as a chassan, even against her will. That's the right that the father has with bia. So minala, from what's the source that the father has this rights on his daughter? So again, the minalon, you read it together here, sorry. Minalon de mekanye bekesef. So first of all, the question is, what's the source for the kinyan of kesef b'chlal for Kidushin? And also that the kesef the avuahu. And that the kesef, not only is the original act of the Kidushin between the husband and the father, that the husband gives the money to the father, and that's how the Kidushin takes effect, but that it not belongs to the father. The father keeps this kesef. What's the source for this? Amarav Yud Amarav Da'amakra, because the pasuk says V'yatsa chinam ein kasef, and this is talking about a Amma Ivriya. So Amma Ivriya, one of the ways that she leaves her master is when she comes to the age of a naira. When she has the simonim, that she's mature and she's a naira, so then she can leave and she doesn't have to pay any money back to the Adon to free herself. Right? Usually, one of the ways that an Amma Ivriya could free herself is that the master paid for her. When he acquired her, so whatever number of years she worked, you deduct the money for that number of years, and then she pays back the money. That's what's called giroin kesef. She pays back the adain the money, and that's how she frees herself. But here the pasuk is saying, once she becomes a naira, she goes out free, ein kasef. She doesn't have to give any money to her master. She goes free. Now these two words of ein kasef are extra words. It says china, so I know it's without money. So we learn from this, en kesef la'adin zeh, when she leaves this master, she doesn't have to pay. Avo yesh kesef la'adin acher. But there is a sort of ownership that she's owned by a different master that she has to pay for. Now, manihu, who is this other master that owns her, that will have to pay for this? That's the father. So from here we see that the father has rights over her, and the father is the one that's mekadesh her, and that the father gets the kesef. Okay, so if we have a source for both points here, we have a source for the concept of kesef. We see that there's the Kidushin of kesef, and over here that this kesef Kidushin goes to the father. But how do you know the father gets to keep this money? Why don't I say that the girl herself is the one that keeps this money? So Rashi says the reason the Gemara is asking this question because it doesn't say in the pasuk ein loy kesef. Loy would be referring to the master. He, the master, when she becomes a naira, does not get money, then I could say, Aval yesh kesef la'adin acher, that the father, which is also a master over his daughter, he gets the money. But it doesn't say the word loy in the pasuk. So maybe it's saying that when a daughter leaves her father, their master, when someone is marrying her, there's money here. Unlike the case when she leaves her master when there's no money, but who says that the father gets the money? Maybe there's money and she gets the money. Says the Gemara, no, but misvara, we know that we can't say that. Even though we don't have a clear source in the pasuk, but logically it doesn't make sense. Because why should this work this way? The pasuk over here is saying that the father is the one that does the act of the Kidushin. The husband gives the father the Kidushin. The chsiv, as the pasuk says, and this is in a different pasuk that describes how the Kidushin takes place, as biti nasati leish hazeh. This is a pasuk that's discussing the case of a person that was Moitzi Shemra on his wife and saying that she had a relation with someone else, and now the father comes to speak for his daughter, and the father says, this is my daughter that I gave to this man. So we see over here, who's the one that does the act of the Kidushin? The Kidushin is the husband gives the money to the father. So if the father is the one that does the Kidushin, v'ihi tishka shakla kaspa, and she's going to keep the money. So Rashi here says, if the Torah is saying here this lashon is biti nasati, what does the Torah really mean with this? If the father is the one that has the whole rights to marry his daughter to who he wants and to do the whole ma'aseh Kidushin, so then for what? For what purpose is the Torah giving the father that rights if he doesn't even keep that money b'chlal? So you see, it means what the Torah is really saying over here is, what's the schus the father has? The father has the schus that the money is his. That's really what the Torah is saying with this. So that's why we don't need any other source to say that the father keeps this money. From the very fact that we see that the father is Makadesh's daughter, we understand that the Torah means to say by this that he keeps the money that he gets as well. Frag the Gemara, but ve'eme hanamili katana. Before, when we spoke about the zechus of a father and a daughter, as I mentioned, there's two things. There's the katana and the naira. But maybe this that we're saying now, that because the father does the Kidushin, so therefore he gets to keep the money, so maybe this is by a katana. The less lo yad, the kabel Kidushin, she has no hand, she has no das, she has no ability to receive her own Kidushin. So then, since the father is the one that's doing the whole Maisa Kidushin for her, so over here he keeps the money. Vol naira this lo yad, the kabel Kidushin. But when it comes to a naira, since she has her own das to be mekabel her own Kidushin, takdish ihi nafsha, so she has the ability to be mekadesh herself, and v'tishkol kaspa, so therefore she should keep the money of the Kidushin for herself. So here there's a machlokes Rashi and Taisus exactly what the Gemara is asking. According to Rashi, the Gemara is asking that by a naira, the father should never get the kesef Kiddushin. Even in a case where the father was Mekadesher, a naira, there's two options. Either the father could be Mekadesher, she's still in the rishus of the father, or the katana could be Mekadesh herself. Or the naira, that is, could be Mekadesh herself. But the Gemara is asking the very fact that she could be Mekadesh herself, that's enough of a reason that she should be able to get the money. But Taisus says that the Gemara's question is that by a naira, the Gemara is asking when she was Mekadesh herself, she should be able to keep the money. Why does the father get the money even in that case when she was Mekadesh herself? So the Gemara answers, Oh Makra, the Pasuk says, Binurea Beisavia. The source for the fact that the father gets the money by a naira is from a different place. Because the Pasuk says by the parsha of Afaras Nadar, the fact that a father has a right to nullify his daughter's vows, the parsha finishes off Binurea Beisavia. When she's a naira, she's in the father's house, she belongs to her father. What does this Pasuk come to say? Kol Shvach Neurim. Any income that comes to a girl when she's still a naira, la'avia, goes to the father. So from this we know that includes the Kiddushin. That's a certain income that comes to her when a husband marries her, so it goes to the father. In fact, the Gemara, is this pasuk really a source for this? But if this is, ve'eloha da omer Ravuna omer Rav. Ravuna said in the name of Rav, Minayin, from where do I know, shemaisa habas la'av, that the income of a person's daughter goes to the father. When she works, when she has income, that the father gets this. And what's the source for this? So Rav said the source is Shanemar v'chiyimker ishes bitoy le'oma. A person sells his daughter, and the pasuk adds the word le'oma, which is an extra word. When it says sells, it's understood that it means to be a maid. Why does it add the word oma? It comes to say ma oma ma'isiyadel l'rabba. Just like a maid, she's owned by her master, and all her income, all her work goes to her master. Av bas nami, so too when it comes to a girl that works, ma'isiyadel lovia. When she's a naira, it all goes to the father. The fact that the kitana, what she works, goes to the father, that's pashut. Because if she's owned by a master, she can't work for herself and it goes to her master. The same is when she's owned by a father. But over here, the chiddush of the extra word la'oma means even when she's a naira, her income goes to her father. That's the source that Rav brought. So now the Gemara asks, why did Rav have to bring this source from the extra word la'oma in this pasuk? Teipik, why didn't Rav learn it out from the pasuk that we brought before? Mi binurea beisavia. In that pasuk that it says by the parsha of Afaras Nadarim that all income, as we said before, kol shvach, all income of a girl goes to the father, that should also be a source for the income as well. So now the fact that Rab didn't learn it from there's a reason. Elo, the answer is ba'afaras nadarim udichsev. When it says there b'nureh beisavia, it's not going in all income. It's telling me the halacha of afaras nadarim. That pasuk is needed to tell me the very halacha of afaras nadarim itself, that a father has the rights to nullify his daughter's vows. So you can't learn out from their income. And you can't learn out from there that the kesef Kidushin of a naira goes to the father either. So hachanami, it's over here as well. If you want to learn out from there, you can't regarding the kesef Kidushin because that's just a halacha for afaras nadarim. So the Gemara asks, true, the pshat of the pasuk is talking about afaras nadarim, but once I see regarding afaras nadarim that a father has the rights over the vows of his daughter to nullify them, so maybe that shows that I should learn from there that the rights of a father extend also to money matters regarding income and regarding kesef Kiddushin, that the father gets to keep it. Says the Gemara, no, we can't learn from this. We have the rule, we can never compare money matters and learn a subject of money from a din of Isser. The fact that the father has rights over his daughter to nullify her vows for an Isser, you can't compare that to money. Now, if you'll argue and say, let's learn from another source where we see that the father gets money from his daughter. And when is that? Neilif miknasa. Let's learn out from a knas. In a case where a person went and violated the person's daughter, and he had a relationship with her, there's a knas of 50 silver coins that he has to pay. And who gets that payment of the knas? The father. So just like the father gets that payment of the knas, I should learn from there regarding kesef Kidushin as well, that the father gets to keep the kesef Kidushin. Says the Gemara, we have a rule, you can't compare a regular money payment to knas. Knas is a chiddush, and the fact that the father gets it is not a source to say that any other money or income or Kidushin the father would get. The last thing the Gemara tries is, maybe we should learn it out from another kind of payment that the Torah says that the father gets. When a person violated someone's daughter with an oinus, against her will, not there's a mafata where it was with her consent, or was an oinus where there's a baishes, there's an embarrassment, there's a pagam, he defiled her, and now her value is not the same. If the father now wants to marry off his daughter to someone, she doesn't have the same value anymore. So there's baishes pagam. So and over here, who gets that payment of baishes pagam? The father. So maybe I should learn from there that the father gets the kesef Kiddushin as well. Says the Gemara, that payment of Baishas Pagam is different. There's a reason why the father gets it. Shani Baishas Pagam Davua Shaykh Begavaya. That's a kind of a payment that the father has a connection to this. Why? Because, Rashi explains, we know that the father has the right to marry off his daughter to whoever he chooses. The whole discussion we're having over here is who gets to keep the kesef Kiddushin. That we're not sure what the source is. But the fact that the father has a right to marry off his daughter to whoever he wants, that's the father's right. So now when this person was mevayish and it was paigim in this girl, he devalued this girl now, so this is something that he took away from the father. The father could have married her off to whoever he wanted, to a manuvel or mukishchin, and even made money off of this theoretically. A father could go to any person and say, you want to marry my daughter, you have to pay me $1,000, $10,000. So this is something a right that the father has. So if someone is mevayish and peigemer, the father's losing out from this. That's why he gets this payment. But the kesef Kiddushin, where's the source that the father gets this? So B'kitzur, after all of this, we're stuck on this question. What's the source that a father gets to keep the kesef Kiddushin of the Naira? So the Gemara goes back to the original limud. Let's just finish here the subject. The Gemara says, Elo mistavre. So it's logical to say we go back to the original source, which is the pasuk of V'yotza chinam ein kasef. Our question was, where do you see in that pasuk that it goes to the father? So the svara here is the chika memayit yitziyah the chvasa kamemayit. When we're excluding and saying that a daughter leaving the father, which is also a kind of a master, is not the same like when she leaves her master if she was a maid. So we're being memayit and saying that this daughter is not the same like the master, but in a similar sense, in a similar way. And so Rashi explains what it means is, if when she left her master, money be paid, who would get that money? The master would get that money because he's the one that owns her. So too over here, when we're saying that over here the master does get the money, who's that master? The father gets the money. So therefore, even though it doesn't say in the pasuk the word loy, but nevertheless, from the context, it's understood that the money goes to the father. You're saying that we're excluding it, but there's a certain comparison over here that she's actually leaving the father's possession, and therefore the father gets the money. But when she leaves the father, it's not the same like when she leaves her master, because when she leaves her master, she leaves completely. But over here, when she leaves her father, when we're talking over here about Kidushin, which is only the first stage of marriage, there's still no chuppah, meaning that the second stage of marriage is she's leaving completely and she belongs not to her husband. It didn't take place yet. She's still connected to her father. She's not leaving completely. So how do you know? Why are you saying to compare this case to the case of leaving her master? And Rashi here brings when it comes to Yerusha, when it comes to Maisi Yedel, so that still belongs to the father until chuppah. Says the Gemara, but b'hafaras nadarim mi nafkalom say. But regarding one concept, which is the hafaras nadarim, she is leaving the father. That now, from this point forward, the father cannot nullify her vows alone. The Tanan, as it says, naira meirasa avio baila mefir nedarel. Once there's edison, the first stage of marriage, Kidushin, so then the father and the husband nullify her vows together. So therefore, there is an aspect of leaving. Even though, as you see over here in the conclusion of the Gemara, it's not leaving to the same extent, in the same way, like a Alma Ivriya leaves her master. Over there, she leaves completely. But there is a concept of Yitziyah. So if there's a Yitziyah, v'yotzachina men kasa, we compare and say, just like by her leaving her master, who would get the money if she would have to pay for it? The master. So to over here, when she leaves, and the husband has to pay for this, when he's acquiring her for the Kidushin, who gets the money? The father that she's leaving from his possession.